Hello, Sandra. Nice to see you today.
Nice to see you, Shana. It's been such a long time,
I
just
know
two
it,
days or 3 days.
right? It's been a while.
We
But it's
tend to hang out together.
right, and it's always fun to hang out and have these conversations.
Yes.
We've been talking about, as we've gone along, the medicine for that comes from shamanism. We've talked about the medicine of plants, the medicine of animals, the medicine of crystals, bringing this idea that there's power. Power is the medicine. To understand that power, we kind of backed that down. The last time we finished speaking, we thought, we really ought to talk about how we access the power, how we get information. And so
Right.
we thought we would talk about this time the idea of altered states of consciousness. When we talk about that with shamanism, they call it the shamanic state of consciousness. I think that's a word that Michael Harner came up with, that
hmm
phrase, shamanic state of consciousness. So are you ready? Are you ready to
I
talk
am
about
ready. Yes,
shifts?
I am ready. Such an important thing to understand how it works, right? Because if we don't explain it, it seems like a little bit um, opened. And a lot of people tend to tell me that they receive messages, they have a know-how of things, and they do journey, and it can probably work as well without having a focus instruction on how to do it, which is what you and I do have.
Mhm.
So, but I like this conversation because I think it's important to learn as much as we can that there is a specific way to get into this shamanic state of consciousness or trance or light trance, and that you and I do it with drums or the sounds, not
Right,
with
right.
plant medicine, which
Exactly,
is another alternative.
exactly. And so I think it's a good place to start. I would say in building vocabulary. Everybody's going to talk about altered states of consciousness very differently. And I think a lot of us have an impression, or at least I did when I first began, that this altered state of consciousness was going to zone me out completely. I would be so disconnected from who and what I was. And there would be these movies of the week, they would be revelatory, and I would come back enlightened. That's not exactly how it works. There's a lot more that goes into the altered state of consciousness because when we work in a shamanic kind of way, as you know, we really want to have control because in control and intention, we're able to actually do something that's productive. If we don't have any control and we don't have any intention, our everything is so unfocused that we don't even know what we're getting. We may be getting tons of information, but how do we apply it? Where does it go? What does it even mean? So
Mm.
we can start with some really basic ideas about altered states of consciousness. And the first one we start with is not the altered one, but the baseline, which is our waking state of consciousness. You and I
hmm
right now are in our normal waking consciousness.
Right.
Science will say that our brain waves are moving at a particular frequency. It's going at between 13 and 16 cycles a second, which means that we are in beta. So that's how we talk about normal states of consciousness. And this is stuff that can be measured. Instruments measure brainwave frequencies. We can also, if we relax and use whatever technique we might use, get into a relaxed and aware state. That's alpha. That's when we start sinking away, stepping away from this very waking, engaged state. 8 to 13 cycles a second. A deep meditative state takes us into theta, 4 to 9 cycles a second. And then we can go into deep trance and sleep. Some people even say that in coma, people have this, which is called delta, and that is fewer than 4 brainwave cycles per second. So we have these basic states, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. But I was stunned as I was looking at this many years ago that we actually have other states that take us higher than our waking state, where the brain waves cycle more frequently. So we can have high beta, where the brain waves cycle 16 to 30 times per second. This is a state that is often associated with high anxiety states. They call it battlefield because this is fear and adrenaline pumping, and the mind is the brain is checking, checking. So it's a hyper state of awareness. There are other states. It's called the K state. This is associated with very eureka kinds of experiences. And in brief flashes, when someone has this moment of divine inspiration, the cycles may go as high as 30 to 35 per second. And then there is the ultimate speeded up cycling that can happen with super high beta, where these are extreme out of the body experiences, kundalini activation, crown activation moments, where it can be 35 to 150 cycles per second in terms of brain waves. These states are very rare. And in fact, sometimes they're clumped together called gamma states. However, it seemed appropriate to mention them because some of them are deeply spiritually triggered. I mean, you think about kundalini, you think about eureka moments, you think of crown activation. These are altered states of consciousness. And this is what science tells us. So, we can stick our heads in some kind of instrument, like an EEG, and discover what state we're in. People have been able to measure this. So we look at these states and we wonder, okay, well, what's the most productive for us? How do we make the shift to get into what state? Okay, so we have to look at what shifts our states.
So which is the state that meditation, a deep meditation, would take you?
Typically, that would be a theta state. Okay, so you come from waking, you settle down into alpha, a nice meditative but relaxed and aware state. You go a little deeper, you're in the deep meditative state, and then you go even further into, some people go into delta for very deep meditation, but I would think that you're mostly at the theta state.
Because I ask you this, because in my meditation, sometimes towards the end, I tend to meditate for about an hour. And towards the end, sometimes I'm sitting down and I'm still meditating, but I'm actually kind of sleeping. But it's not sleeping.
Right.
It's not like I fall asleep. It's totally a loss. You're like taken somewhere. It's a very different thing than what I do shamanically.
Right.
But this can last maybe a few minutes, or because I don't notice, I'm not here really. And it is the most restorative time. Your entire energy field is completely different. So I don't know. I've heard the word samadhi, from India. I have no idea if that is what you reach, but you are in a state where your entire consciousness is gone, but here, and you're in bliss. So
absolutely right. So, and I think one of the key words you've used with that has always been associated with meditation is restorative.
Okay.
That whole idea that you are in such deep rest that all your systems can get restored, and it's a beautiful time, and samadhi may very well be that state using that vocabulary. So here again, we get into this whole idea of how people talk about the states. The reason I like to start with this idea of the science and the brainwaves is because that's how we can make distinctions. When you're practicing, it really, I would say in one level, it doesn't matter at all. You just do what you do, you know what you're doing. However, there is an importance attached to shifting out of normal waking awareness, because in normal waking awareness, we don't have the perception we need to
Hmm.
connect with spirit help
Hmm.
because we are so distracted. We have all of this stuff around us, desks, water,
Yes.
all of this. And even our physical body awareness can take us out of a spiritual connection. So
Right.
dropping into a
Yeah.
state
And
of
the brain is fully active.
absolutely.
Fu- Fully active. And sometimes before starting a shamanic journey, I wonder, am I going to be able to do this today? I'm so like in my head space. I'm so worried. And I worry. I
Right.
worry. And I think, I'm not going to be able to do this today. I'm too, there's too much intensity. And then I give it a chance and
Exactly.
it
And
just
that's where some of
happens.
the tools come in.
Hmm.
So we can talk about some of the ways that we can move out of our normal waking state. And I like it that there are 8 ways to do this. And they were somewhat codified by Gerald Gardner, who was a magician earlier in actually kind of the turn of the last century and early 1900s. He had done some study in the East. He'd been posted there, I believe, as a diplomat at one time. Anyway, there was a connection with the East. And his work explained, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this best, that there are 2 ways that we can shift our consciousness. One is inhibitory,
Hmm.
one is exhibitory.
Okay.
Inhibitory ways, what we do is we slow down, and that helps us shift consciousness. And there are ways we do that. In exhibitory ways, we have stimulation, and it's a kind of raising of frequencies, although lead to a shift out of waking consciousness. I think it's more easy to understand that inhibitory kind of style because when we think about it, meditation,
Hmm.
meditation is the slowing. It's the slowing,
Hmm.
slowing, slowing. And we shift out of waking consciousness. Isolation is another way to do that. And
Hmm.
one of my favorite things to talk about here is the isolation tank. It's a they're wonderful tools to experience isolation without having to truck off to a cave and lock yourself away in darkness for months at a time. You can float in the tank, and the idea of isolation here is a kind of sensory deprivation. In fact, some people call them sensory deprivation tanks.
What kind of tank is that?
Uh, a lot of them look like great big eggs. They're filled with water that is super saturated with salt. So when you enter them, you actually float in the tank. The water's at skin temperature, the air above you is at skin temperature. So as you float and are completely supported in the darkness of the tank, you are isolated. Your senses are deprived of all kinds of input. You can't see, it's dark. There's nothing on your skin that you can feel like fabric because it's just water, skin temperature, almost like amniotic fluid, if you think about it.
Oh, wonderful. I haven't heard about this.
Yeah, and so you can float, and a lot of times that triggers incredible visualization. So it takes you out of the waking state. So those are 2 that are very readily understood in terms of shifting state.
Hmm.
Although when you get to the exhibitory piece of it, you can think about body movement. People who do yoga, people who are engaged in certain martial
Tai
arts,
Chi.
Tai Chi
Right. Tai
practices.
Chi.
You've got dance. You've got people who shake and shiver. They're things that people in the North used to practice using cold to shiver to get into an altered state. So this body movement, mudras even, shift
Mm.
consciousness. When you think about the mudra, it's connections with hand and gesture that connect different meridians in the body, giving different signals and having different meaning. So that shifts. Sex is also something that is
Hmm.
often used to shift consciousness. Now, there are dangers in some of this, and not dangers as in, you're going to lose your life. The danger is that in using some of these techniques, you can get lost in the technique and forget your intention. So with the sexual kinds of practices that are typically used to raise consciousness, you can get so involved with your partner that you forget what you're doing it for. So that's just the cautionary piece of that.
But that would be okay
It
in
would
that
be okay. I
instance.
mean, nothing
Yeah,
terrible is going to happen. You're just not going to hit the target that
right.
you want.
Another one for me would be swimming. I think
That would be
when
your physical movement. Absolutely,
yes,
body movement.
that would be something. Being in water, being swimming for long periods of time, just becomes a total
Hmm.
out of body experience and calming for my nervous system.
And I think that
It's
connects up with one of the other ones, which is
mhm,
breath control. When you're
okay,
swimming, it is the breath control when you're actually doing the correct breathing and
right.
strokes.
You're right.
And
Especially snorkeling and scuba diving, when you start hearing your breath
right.
underwater, it really triggers something where it takes you. Um, I think that's why I love it, and so many people love it. It merges you with what you're seeing,
Hmm.
and your brain is no longer thinking about it. You're just merged.
Hmm. And that's another one, sound. Because when
Uh,
you're swimming, you have not only the movement and breath
mhm,
control, but as you say, when you're using a snorkel or another kind of implement, you have sound. So, sound,
right.
depending on the kind of sound, that
Mhm,
rhythmic sound, that
mhm,
easy, gentle sound can
mhm,
really calm you down, can really be an inhibitory factor.
mhm.
Yet, breath control and sound can work just the opposite. And if anybody's listened to electronic dance music,
Mhm.
there are all sorts of genres within that. One of them is actually called trance music. It is hard beating, driving music that is definitely a sonic driver. It is definitely exhibitory because it excites you
Wow.
and it gets combined often with body movement and dance. And so that shifts consciousness as well.
Wow.
So, I mean, we have these incredible ways to shift consciousness. And the only two we haven't mentioned yet are pain and intoxication.
Mhm.
Pain, we think about that, and the one that comes to mind most readily are the Maori people who use the tattoos as part of their initiation, which is very painful, but it shifts consciousness. So we've got tattooing, you've got piercing, branding, certain kinds of things that people use
Wow.
in various cultures that shift consciousness at various states in their lives, um, and can be very initiatory. And then, of course, intoxication, and that can go either way. You can either be
Right.
taking something that's going to really zone you out, or you can take something that's going to jazz you up. So we've got these ways. We can meditate, we can go into
Mhm.
isolation, you can use body movement, you can use sex, pain, sound, intoxication, and breath control, all as ways to shift consciousness.
Mhm.
So when we get to shamanism, the primary way is this sound, the sonic driver.
Right. Right.
And the beauty of that, as we use that to shift consciousness, is that you can control it. You can
Mhm.
always stop drumming. If
Mhm.
you take something that is an intoxicant, you cannot
Mhm.
always stop when you want. The drum, so it's safe, it's legal, it's you can
Mhm.
control it, and it really helps with the brain waves because as you change the rhythm of the drum, you can find that the brain waves begin to entrain with whatever rhythm you're using, and that
Mhm.
can definitely take you down from beta, waking consciousness, into your alpha and theta. And as we've all experienced, anybody who's been at a workshop and listened to drumming, sometimes it takes you all the way to delta, and there are
Mhm.
people around you are snoring because they just slipped that for a bit further.
Yes, it's so interesting, this what we're talking about, because one of the things that people always ask me is, can everybody do this? And it's so surprising. I just had this experience with a friend of mine who just took the basic training with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies 2 days ago, and she called me so excited, saying that out of the 6 people that were doing the training, they all were successful.
Wow,
And
nice.
she was so excited. And I told her that in my training, the first time we were 30 and everybody was
Mhm.
successful. So is it something that is innate to human beings that if we learn, obviously the Foundation for Shamanic Studies has nailed it down to a really concise and beautiful, simple, beautiful techniques that are given that work, right? So is it for everybody?
I think it's an individual decision if people want to pursue shamanism.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are called to it, some people are like, not going to go there. Yet, if you make a choice to pursue it, it is possible to take a shamanic journey. Now, everybody's not going to have the same experience within the journey. I was just
Mm-hmm.
looking at something today. There are people who have what is called aphasia, if I'm saying that correctly. They
Uh-huh. What is that?
actually have an inability to visualize. They
Okay.
cannot visualize. Now, it's a very, 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 very small percentage of the population that experiences this. Yet, there are other ways. You don't have to visualize something to have an experience. And I think that's one of the things that people find
Yes.
it difficult. Again, it's a language problem. When we have conversations about getting into altered states, um, we forget that we are in and out of altered states all the time. And people begin to think, oh, an altered state, I don't know if I can do it. Well, anybody who's gotten into a car and
Mm-hmm.
been on their way home, but had lots of things on their mind, suddenly pulls into the driveway and wonders,
Right.
how the heck did I get home? They've been in an altered state.
Right.
Now, they weren't tranced out to the point they were totally out of control. They were able to do what they needed to do to get the car home, but they were in an altered state. So I think talking about these states of consciousness, we have to be very careful or at least broaden the idea of it and explain, okay, so we've got these brainwave things going on. We are in and out of these brainwave states all day. You're in a boring business meeting, I can guarantee you've dropped out of waking and you're in alpha or theta. When you're in a meeting and you start thinking about what's for lunch or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and you start thinking, about being at the beach, you're having a reverie. That's an altered
Right.
state. You go to bed at night and you have a dream about taking a bus trip. You're in an altered state. So
Right.
altered states, we are in and out of them all day. If you
Right.
check in with yourself and say, am I fully awake here? No, I'm kind of relaxed. Or, wow, I'm hyper
Right.
excited. I mean, you're in and out of altered states all day. So everybody's doing it. And I think that's one thing people have to know. The next thing they know is they have brains, they have brain waves. Yes, you can do it. So getting through our barriers, our challenges, is mostly a matter of attitude. And it's like,
Right.
I can't, like, just like you said, some days
For
we
being
approach,
ready.
yeah,
And yeah, I think you have a calling from the heart also when when you start using your body, your vessel, for other things than the normal life, because it's so
right.
interesting. Was such a fascinating thing for me to realize that I had lived 55 years not knowing how to use this other side, this other part of my brain. I guess it all happens in the brain. Um, and then to find out that you can not only get into a trance or a shamanic trance, but that you can profit from it so much. You can learn how to pass through that veil that I call that veil, because I actually kind of feel and pass through a veil,
Mhm.
and that suddenly I'm still myself, but I am journeying, I am envisioning my helping spirits, I am providing an access to learning about something if I have a question, or there's so much that can happen
Mhm.
once you start a shamanic journey. And you talk about intention. It's so important to know why you're going to take an hour or half an hour or 15 minutes of your time to do a shamanic journey,
Right.
the way we call it, a shamanic journey, to have that intention, to have that clarity. And then for myself, before I even do it, I also want to prepare my environment, my space where I am, my body, my little home here, my vessel. I want to prepare it a little bit. It's not like I come from the groceries, I put down the groceries on the floor, I clean a plate, and then I jump here in my office and say, okay, let's do it. No, I really love that preparation.
Mhm.
And for me, I also use different tools. You know, I have different rattles. Um, I have bracelets that create a sound. I have all kinds of rattles that I use. I use also a kalimba, the sound
I
of
love
this
that.
beautiful, it's just so gorgeous, because the kalimba, my helping spirits explain me that it's a very good preparation for me before doing shamanic work, because it really helps me tune in to this possibility of being connected to
Mhm.
everything and connected to source, connected to the sounds. It's very calming also. I love kalimbas. And then I also clean myself from the day. So I have made all these tools with feathers at different beaches in the south of Chile. I come from Chile. There's a little quartz here. And I have picked up all these feathers with the intention for help and healing. So I'll use sage, sage myself a little bit and brush myself off, try with the intention of allowing everything from the day to leave so I can start this preparation. I
Mhm.
also love the smells of myrrh and frankincense. I do all kinds of things to prepare myself for that intention.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to explain that, because this work is very precious. It's not something that we do um, randomly like this. So I don't know, what
Right.
are the things that you do before starting a practice?
I think one of the things I want to touch back in before I answer that question is I think you were touching on something that people don't often consider when they pick up a practice or think they're learning a technique. I think first and foremost, it's recognizing we are a soul with a body.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You're a soul that has a body, not so
mm-hmm,
much a body that has a soul, but we are a soul that got to have a body to have
mm-hmm,
experiences and to learn. And what we're doing when we shift consciousness is that we're moving away from this idea that, and I don't know how this came to me when you were speaking, but it was like I was reminded of a teaching long ago that people often think of themselves as tubes. Think of yourself as a tube. You put something in one end and it comes out the other end. So you're either hungry or looking for the bathroom. And these are the two big distractions of the tube. And now that's a person who has not yet connected to the fact that there is a spiritual side to life and that they have a soul. They are a
mm-hmm,
soul first. So I think that that's a piece that gets woven in to your question earlier about can everybody do this? I think one of the first foundational pieces is recognizing you are more than your physical body. And that's a direct line out of some of the Robert Monroe work. You
Right.
are more than your physical body. As for preparation, for me, it's usually lighting a candle because that brings light. And the light is the beacon that can bring me
Mm-hmm.
home after I've departed. My attention can, my awareness, my consciousness can be drawn to it to return and to depart. I often start with prayer, and usually my prayer is the same kind of thing that you do. It's with the intention of clearing space and
Mm-hmm.
and making the place that I work, which is wherever I am at the moment, it's sacred space because I declare it so by calling in helping spirits from the directions, the four directions
Mm-hmm.
around me, up and down. That makes six. And then there are three internal ones, inside, right, and left. And I do that as part of a Buryat practice that was taught to me
Mm-hmm.
by my Buryat teacher. So those are typically the ways that I begin. And certainly, as you say, there are times when you come in with the groceries, somebody calls, you have to do something right away, and you go through that very quickly, but you still have your protocol that gets you
Yeah.
in the space. All of the tools, everything that we have as a tool, we don't need. We don't
Right.
need them because we are souls. We have the connection. We just have to remember it and use it. But they definitely are beautiful tools for the times when the monkey mind, or we just can't get out of the fact that we have put ourselves in an excited state and trying to slow down. So the beautiful triggers of scent. I love your sage. The sage brush is
Mm-hmm.
just such a beautiful thing. Sweetgrass is another thing. All of these have traditional applications that, because of the long use they've had, can help us with our consciousness as well. Because the spirits know when we burn sweetgrass, we are calling them. When we burn
Right.
our copal or
Yes.
cedar, it is
So
an honoring.
so true for me. That is, it just connects immediately. It doesn't take long, it's
No.
not long and like, but there's also like a few things that they have asked me to wear. Like I wear this ring.
Uh-huh. Oh, it's
It is,
beautiful.
yeah, it is a little drummer.
Hmm.
It's a little kachina with a
And it
drum,
looks like the
and
sun kachina. Is it the sun kachina?
I would think so.
I think so. Yeah,
Eh,
beautiful.
It called me in an antique store. I saw it. I knew I had to have it,
And what about the
and I
turquoise in it?
yes, it's a little turquoise in it.
And how does
Yeah,
that, do you think that and the silver is something
I
that
don't
can help?
know. I don't know. It's just a ring. It comes from wearing a ring in this finger, the index finger.
Hmm.
It comes from that. I can wear other rings on that finger. It brings a memory
Okay.
in my body of ancient times of, and I have no idea why, but it brings me to myself.
Hmm.
There is a memory that I have noticed that when I'm wearing a ring, I don't wear rings during the day. I only wear these rings when I want to be connected.
Hmm.
And I also sometimes wear them when I go out where there's a lot of people. So it centers me. And also there's these shoes that I wear, and that was also given to me by my helping spirits. It's not like a full attire if you want, but there's these little moccasin shoes that I have on that when I forget to wear them and I'm preparing for a healing and I'm going in a shamanic state of consciousness to ask help to for my helping spirits, what should I do with this person? What does this person need? And they always remind me, oh, what about the ring and the shoes? Wear
Wow.
them.
Hmm.
So there is many personal things that can help individuals connect. I have no explanation. I
Right.
think it is very true that you don't need anything. I was recently in the forest with a shaman from Sweden who made me do a vision quest for a few hours in the dark in the forest. And I was worried that I didn't have my drum, and I wanted, to prepare myself with my drum. And she just told me, just take a stick in the forest and make it yours, and use that tool. And I ended up using it, turning it around. Like if this was the stick, I was just turning it. And with the turning, with a certain pace, it just totally took me into a
Right.
state, a shamanic state. So you learn these tools, and then you learn to relax and do it because you're made to do it, not because you have the tools.
Exactly. Exactly. So well said. So well said.
It's so much fun. I really want you to explain our viewers what happens to us when we um, when we go through this veil, because I think a lot of people are very curious. What is this? What happens to the human being? What happens to the shamanic practitioner?
It's probably very debatable. I think people will talk about it in very different ways. To me, the way I talk about it is my awareness,
Mm-hmm,
my soul, my spirit shifts the channel to which it is tuned. So, like a
mm-hmm,
radio, if you think about the old radios that had a dial, and you'd either turn a dial or you'd push buttons, and the little indicator would go up and down, like in a car, it would
uh-huh,
move. I think what happens is just like the radio dial, we pull in a different frequency.
mm-hmm,
And that's as simple as I can make it. And so right now, you and I are speaking together. We're in waking consciousness, and I'm tuned into you. You're tuned into me. This is where our
mm-hmm.
attention is. But if we were to take a moment to take a deep breath and maybe close our eyes, cut off the stimulation, and use an inhibitory technique, which could either be drumming, my attention could easily be shifted, because now I'm going to go look for a different frequency on my brain dial
Right,
that takes me, my awareness, to another place.
right,
And so I think it's as simple as that. You're tuning your awareness to a different frequency.
right,
And in shamanism, we talk about upper world, we talk about lower world. I think that's something that also freaks people out, because they begin to associate those connections with religions of the book that will talk about upper world, going up. Oh, that's the heavenly realm. Going down to the lower
mm,
world. Oh, that's the hellish realm. I don't want to go there. I'm not good enough for the other place. I don't want to, and all this junk gets layered, and they start thinking, and
mm.
thinking is the last thing you want to do. You don't want to think. If you're thinking, you're not receiving. And when you're
Right,
shifting your attention, you are becoming a receiver for frequencies of a different order.
right.
And in receiving those frequencies of a different order, that's the connection you're making to the helping spirits. When you're
And
thinking, you can't do that, because your mind is
right.
filled with garbage.
And I wanted to add to what you're saying, that for me, once I shift the consciousness and I
Mhm.
go where I know where to go, I have a little ways to go to the upper world or lower world that are basically always the same. I am no longer here. If the phone rings, of course, I will hear it and it
Right.
will be very distracting. Somebody one time rang the bell of my apartment when I was in a state of consciousness, and my heart just came out of my chest. I thought I was gonna have a heart attack.
Right.
And because it you really have to protect your environment to be private, because you are really going somewhere else. And And then yesterday or this morning, I was doing a shamanic journey to do a channeling to receive messages. I work a lot with crystals, and I was asking messages about this opal from Mount Shasta. And at one, I write an automatic writing. I write the journeys, I write the messages, they just come. And at one point, it was so interesting because the pen was writing and writing and writing and correcting. Sometimes, no, not that word, another word was coming through. And I had the brain to think, how do I do this? I even had the possibility
Right.
to think. It was like double tasking.
It
So I want your explanation about that, because I was
is.
amazed that I could think, oh my God, how do I do this? I mean, no, and sometimes, I write a word that is not correct, and they make me cross it and write another word. And
Mhm.
I realized that I wasn't doing anything on purpose, that it was the writing just comes, the words just come, the phrase gets done. It might not be perfect English, Shakespearean English, but and I thought, wow, this is so unbelievably cool. The things we can actually, I don't know, I don't want to say do, because it's not doing something, but it's using your vessel for mystery, for things that, and also the reason I use the word mystery is that I've done it so much, but it is still mysterious.
Mhm.
How can I get all this information? Because me, little Sandra, really doesn't know that information. I'm very
Right.
basic, my language is very basic. And the helping spirits give these messages that are so, I could never, never come up with these messages. It's not possible. So you also notice that there is many things that are happening. And one of the things that is happening is that there's a broader view on the situation, on the problem, or on the question, or if you're asking, to connect with a stone that was created billions of years ago, there's a broader view. It takes you to a place where there's knowledge.
Mhm.
I don't know how to explain it. It takes you, shamanism is capable to make me journey, to take me to a I don't know if it's in my own brain, in my, higher self, or in the universe. All these are words, but it takes me
Right.
to a place where there's know-how, where there's knowledge, where there's um, understanding of things. I get shivers when I say it, because there is that enormous knowledge library,
Mhm.
or so I want Shana to say what I know your face is like, ooh, you're
I don't,
turning red.
I can't explain it. I can only say that when you are engaged in that kind of activity, you do have multiple awarenesses. And I think if I were to fall back on anything, I would fall back on the theosophical idea of planes of existence, in that we're not a human body. That's,
Mm-hmm,
the tube. We're not just the tube, food in, food out, that's,
mm-hmm,
breathing in, breathing out. We're not just the tube. There are many more aspects to our body than we have any clue about. Um, and so having these seven planes of human experience, we don't experience all of them at the same time. But the
mm-hmm,
theosophists talked about, we have like the physical etheric plane, we have the astral plane, that this is where the emotions come in. We have the mental causal plane. We have the ability to go to the Buddhic plane, which is a group consciousness. We can go to the Atmic, the monadic,
mm-hmm,
we go to the final one, which is emptiness, or the Adi. and we have bodies around us. Kirlian photography has shown us that there is an aura, which is,
Mhm.
out here somewhere, there's still an aspect of me here. I'm not just, I don't end at the skin.
Mhm. I know, it's amazing.
So
Mhm.
it's, again, it's the tuning, it's the frequency. If I tune into those various aspects of myself,
Mhm.
I can connect with those various aspects of others on other
Mhm.
planes, in other ways, and I can have multiple awareness. Multiple awareness. Because even if you were sitting here right now, if I were to ask you,
Mhm.
check in with just how far extended you feel your your
Mhm.
your field is.
Mhm.
And you might say, well, it feels a little closed because I'm looking at this camera. But if I were to sit here in meditation, it might extend
Feel enormous.
and
Yeah.
it becomes enormous. You look at some of the literature, the Merkaba literature that comes from some of the Judaic tradition, and think about how expanded the Merkaba, the vehicle, the chariot is in which the
Mm.
spirit soul travels, and where it can go, the kinds of places. So these aren't really answers to your questions. They're probably additions to
Yeah.
the mystery.
Yes.
And I think having mysteries is a gift. Having
Right.
a mystery means,
Tapping into
which,
the possibility of tapping into the mysteries of our existence
mhm,
is such a wonderful thing. And also, sorry that I interrupt
well,
you
go,
all the time, but it's just, you know, most of us live here with the TV on, and
or that little
we're
box in the hand.
right, exactly. And we're bombarded by external information and things that are nonsense and not even important in our lives, and because they never show us news that are really amazingly interesting. It is, and so we just don't want to be alone, and we put on the TV as noise almost, right? I don't,
Right.
because I don't own one, but a lot of the people do that, or having music as noise, not having silence. And I find it so hard to stop all that,
Mhm.
but so beneficial once you get used to silence in a home, once you get used to slowing down the pace, you start noticing all these nuances that are trying to tap into you to tell you, hey, look at me, I exist. I was playing with a bird today because I feed them, and I watched a bird. I had put a feeder here that was much better, and the bird was here, and he couldn't notice that there were grains here. He was eating from here, but I had placed much more nutritious grains right next to it. And I was connecting to that bird and telling him, just walk a little bit and look inside. And I was just connecting with him, and he was amazing. He was lifting his neck and looking at me, like trying to understand. And I wasn't talking to him, it was just
Right.
telepathic, sending him images. And he didn't do it in front of me, but I noticed when I passed by a few minutes later, he had gotten the message and he was eating the good grains. So, how much can we do is endless. We can
It is.
connect.
It is. And I think that the thing is to step away from distraction. I know I'm somewhat guilty of wanting information. I'm kind of an information junkie. But what I've learned is that there's a significant difference between information, knowledge, and wisdom.
Mhm.
What we often feel that we're getting when we listen to TVs and do the iPhones, which I don't do any of that either. I don't watch television. I don't have a phone like that. When I step away from that, I'm able to get a different kind of knowledge and perspective that
Right.
is not something that is just data. Data thrown at you, if you're not using it and you don't understand it, it's in one ear, out the other. it has no meaning. But
Right.
when you get something that can, you can chew on it like a mystery, and a mystery, I don't think, in terms of human life, isn't actually meant to be solved, but it is that line of attraction that you're able to follow that provides you with bits of knowledge along the way. And from that knowledge, you're able to build wisdom. And the wisdom
Yeah.
is what helps you understand the benefits of silence. It helps you to understand when you have a dream, what it means. When you have an intuition, I'm having an intuition now. There's something here I have to pay attention to. It helps you understand synchronicity.
Hmm.
You know, okay, isn't it, instead of saying, oh, this is weird. Did you know I just thought about you and now you're calling me on the phone? Well, let's move beyond it's weird or isn't that crazy. Let's look at that and say, okay, I was thinking of you, you're calling me. What is the message we have for each other? What is the knowledge we
Mm,
can share that can build further wisdom?
right.
So, and that's part of our experience with our
Yeah.
shamanic journeys too, because we're stepping out of this busyness to a different place where there are beings willing to share knowledge with us. And this knowledge, when we bring it back to our waking consciousness, which is really important because you can't live out there all the time. We do have human bodies. We are tubes. Our tubes do need to be fed.
Right.
We, you know, and what we learn has to be actualized. That's the reason for our presence here, is to bring the knowledge back, to chew on it, to make it wisdom and make it work in the world.
And to also partner with the helping spirits, because this came up this week as well, that somebody was telling me, oh, my helping spirits tell me to do this and to do that. And I stopped that person. I said, no, they don't. Those are not the kind, compassionate helping spirits. Kind and powerful and compassionate helping spirits do not force you to do things. You are partners,
Right.
and there is a sense of ownership of this partnership that is very important.
Mhm.
That if something is not feasible, I would say, I can't do that, you know? And so there is a sense of partnership that you develop and of respect. And it is really a connection of two lines. You know, your conscious body that needs to attend to life and bills and having a clean house and being loving here and living in this plane, and these helping spirits that are wanting to help us. And I just want to add and confirm it with you that we don't connect with just about any spirit that is out there. We
Right.
really learn through these shamanic techniques that are safe techniques. We learn to connect with helping spirits that are really the group of spirits for each one of us that play a role that is important of help, healing, kindness, compassion, and knowledge. And there's a lot of other spirits around that we don't connect to. And I think that is such an important definition in shamanism, because shamanism is so popular right now. I get so many messages left and right. Oh, I'm so intrigued by what you do. You know, I do it too. I smoke a joint and I take shamanic journeys, and I'm like, okay, no, it's not exactly
No, that's not
what
what we're
I
doing.
do.
Not what we're doing.
It's so
Right.
there's a certain, ethics and training, and then once you learn to do that, it's just a wonderful experience.
Mhm. I think it's important for people to realize that I had one teacher tell me just because somebody's dead doesn't mean they're enlightened. So, I'm talking to dead people and they're telling me to do this all the time. No, 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 no. Um, Helping spirits do not have an agenda that they want you to
Right,
follow. They don't tell you what to do. They may make suggestions. They may
right.
offer direction. It is totally up to you what you do with that.
So
So,
important.
and you have to exercise your own will. And shamanism is about really, in some ways, gaining your own personal authority and respect for yourself. Because if you begin to respect yourself, then you don't feel threatened by other things out there, and you begin to respect them for who and what they are, and you're not going to try to change them for your benefit, which, in the healing practices, going to help somebody is all about getting spirit help for them that may or may not be what I would say or what I would do. I
Hmm.
can have no idea about how to fix something. It's not appropriate for me, but it's called being the hollow bone. I just convey the message. My having an ego and a vested interest in what happens is inappropriate. They've asked me for help from a helping spirit. I deliver the message. I deliver the mail. It's not up to me to read it.
Right. And especially with people who are not in good health.
Right.
They're asking for healings, hoping for a miracle. I always explain to them what my helping spirits have explained to me is that it might not benefit that person's contract or life to gain this miracle, that maybe the medicine is in accepting a certain, ailment or disease
Right.
and maybe even passing from it.
Mhm.
And that I will ask for help and healing and a cure, but it is not up to me to judge if it will be beneficial for that
Right.
person.
Right.
And because these helping spirits that we work with really know us so well, they know the patient so well, they know the person who's asking. It's not like a new connection. And they know everything about that person's life and they know what will benefit that person. And that does sometimes mean that there could be a miracle
Absolutely.
of, of an ailment, but it is not like a promise that can be made to a person who asks for healing. It is, as you say, you go, you collect the mail, you bring it back, you explain, you give the input, and then there's so many lessons in our lives
Right.
when we're having difficulty.
Hmm.
What I like to do in my life is ask questions to the universe. What am I learning from this
Right.
difficulty? What am I supposed to learn? What am I supposed to do with this? What medicine is there for me? Even when something seems negative, like, cancer or any type of disease or bankruptcy or anything, there's always a lesson. There's always a learning.
That's right. It's fascinating when you talk about that because some of those dire disasters are our wake up calls. It
Right.
is our soul screaming to us, you've got to make changes.
Yeah.
And uh, there's a story that I've heard that's really interesting about a man who had gone to a Native American woman to have some work done for healing. And she did some very intense work. He seemed to have a cure, actually. A difference. Healing is a balancing, cure is an alleviation of symptoms. We separate the two. So he experienced a cure. And he said, okay, well, now I've got to go home to my life because he had stepped away from his life to go through this process. And she said, you can't go back to your life. That's what made you sick. So he had not heeded the wake up call.
Hmm.
And and was not going to make the changes he needed to make, which meant that he could go back and after all this intense work, just turn it around on a dime because he wasn't making changes. So, as you say, there is healing, there is curing, and sometimes the actual ailment or whatever the circumstances are the wake up call. The soul is screaming to be acknowledged. And it doesn't
Absolutely.
matter if it's going to be departing from the body, but if it gets the acknowledgement it needs, it's going off in a balanced way, which means
And
that
also to
evolution is
fight.
going to be better.
Yeah. And sometimes, when you get sick, you're getting sick because your subconscious is trying to check out from this life. So you're making yourself sick without noticing it. And then you would benefit much more than asking for a healing. You would at that point benefit from asking, what is making me sick? Let's find out, what is it in my life that
What,
is
yeah,
right,
what is the
and then
wisdom of
heal
my
that.
illness? What is the
Right,
wisdom from this illness? And
exactly.
as
And
you,
you heal that, and then the body can heal.
right,
You can't try to heal the body without healing the reason that was
mhm.
making you sick. It could be a heartache, it
Could be
could be
anything.
being broken hearted from another life. It could be childhood, it could be anything. And to that is the beauty also of shamanic work, is that we have these techniques to go backwards in time
Go
and
anywhere.
find, yeah,
It's called soul healing. You're actually healing the soul.
the soul.
The soul.
Right. So,
Well,
Shana, another one of these amazing times spent with
yeah,
you.
beautiful times. Thank you for sharing your stories, your tools with us too. So
Thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you. You know so much. I call you a library of knowledge for a good reason, as
Well,
everybody noticed
they're
today.
both there and then experiences because when you start seeing it in play and
Right,
seeing people, I think that's when, as I say, you can get knowledge, but then you have to chew it into wisdom and
right.
know when and how to try to express it to help other people.
And also to have a life filled with joy.
Absolutely.
Let's not
Absolutely.
forget that we're here, we're alive,
Right.
we're here today, we have a body,
So let's
we
have some fun.
yeah,
Have joy.
exactly. And fun for me doesn't mean party. Fun for
No,
me is that connection with source.
it's right.
So
It's
fun can be all kinds of things,
right.
different for just to
Deeper and
feel
deeper
joy.
connections to divinity to me.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
On that said, it is Christmas time. Shayna is a big Christmas lover.
Yule solstice. I mean,
Yes,
it's just the cold wants to bring the tree in and have
yes,
the sense of
absolutely.
evergreen and eternal qualities that come with the green. Just
There's a lot to learn, a lot to
lot to learn,
learn
and
in
there's so
these
much
dark
richness,
times. Yes,
even in the traditions that many of us celebrate. I mean, there are deeper and deeper levels to each of the symbols that we bring into our home at this time of the year. And I like all of the traditions. I do them
yeah.
all.
Well, maybe our next talk could be about ceremony and traditions,
That would be
you
an
know?
interesting one. So we'll have to think
Maybe.
about that.
Exactly. Thank you, Shayna.
Thank you,
Such
and
a pleasure.
nice. We'll look forward to next time that we can have
Yes.
a talk when we're squaring our circle.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank you.
you.